The last panel of our today's conference is dedicated to the lessons learned and the future systemic solutions. The tragedy in Kočani raised important issues regarding institutional readiness, hospital capacities, interinstitutional coordination, and community role. Within this panel, there's going to be discussions about institutional learning and accountability, hospital management in crisis conditions, European standards and international cooperation, the role of humanitarian organizations, and community support. In the course of this panel, a brief video will be shown presenting testimonies by patients explaining human dimension of recovery. I'm inviting Dr. Gordana Georgieva, University Clinic of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, Dr. Vlatko Grozdanov, Mayor of Kočani Municipality, Said Saiti, Secretary General of the Red Cross, Dr. Nebojša Nastov, Director of St. Nomo Ohrid University Clinic, Dr. Besnik Hamiti, Chief of the Minister's Office, and Dr. Nadia Demetris, President of the European Burn Association. You may take the floor. Dear Minister, dear colleagues, dear guests, dear most beautiful children from Kočani, I am honored and have the responsibility to moderate the last panel of our today's conference. Some events change the course of the day, but some events change the course of life. 1 year after the Kočani tragedy, we are here today not only to remind ourselves of the event, but also see what we learned and understood from it. Today we have institutional heads, international partners, health workers and humanitarian organizations. The goal is to reflect on the response to the Kočani fire and translate such experiences into specific systemic solutions. For me, this is not just a professional role, but it has become part of my personal story. On the night the fire took place, I was on call at the University Clinic of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. At that point, all of us in attendance today and back in those clinics, medicine was not only profession, but it became a duty to our people. Within a few hours, clinics were filled with young patients with severe burns needing urgent surgical interventions and huge human care. Back then, a process was initiated that is lasting today and will be lasting further as well. Before we get started with the discussion, let us see a video. From flame to hope. One night that has changed Kočani. The fire at the Pulse discotheque has left traces. Struggle for life for every individual. Strive for the country institutions. The tragedy took place early this morning in a nightclub in Kočani. At least 50 people and 53 of the guests at the Pulse nightclub lost their lives in this fire. In the first hours, the system responded with its full capacity. Doctors, medical, nurses, first responders, all in one mission to save lives. Second by second, hope was built. My name is Alexander Avokatov. I'm 40 years old. We were performing with my band, when we completed our performance, we agreed to went to the Pulse discotheque where that evening DNK had their show. About midnight we went there. We sat nicely, and very soon this happened. My name is Goran Tonev. I am 25 years old. I come from Štip. I deal with music. On the critical night, I was performing with DNK as their guitarist, and somehow I was very injured. I thought that my life was over, and a girlfriend came to me, and after some time I understood who she was. With her mother, by a private vehicle, they took me to the Kočani hospital. The fight with the stampede and the elements was so huge that I didn't have any room to think about anything. If something was burning or dropping from the ceiling, my only focus was to remain on my feet. I was viewing the exit, and in this fight I managed to take 2 steps that were crucial to get out. And I was met by my band colleagues who were already outside, and they transported me to the Štip hospital. Then I was transported to the Skopje clinic, and this was in my consciousness, and I stayed in a chamber for 1 month. I am one of the survivors. The last thing I remember was I was admitted at the city hospital in the surgery ward. I lost my consciousness. I was taken to Skopje by ambulance. So a number of incisions were made to me in Skopje, 2 or 3, and by a military plane I was transferred to Belgrade. I am Tamara Velkova. I am 18 years old, and I'm one of the injured in the Pulse fire. I remember only that I was extracted, drawn by somebody. I didn't see who it was. For half an hour I was inside, and when I went outside, when I was pulled out, there were already hospital ambulances. I went up to the first one. When we arrived in the hospital, I got out, and a paramedic accepted me. My mother came and took me to the surgical ward. I didn't know it was that serious. I thought I was going to be covered with dresses, and that was all, dressings. But when I saw the others, what they were like, because I couldn't see myself, I realized it was rather serious, and I got frightened. They moved me from Štip to Skopje quickly. In the early morning hours, the injured from Kočani started arriving. They were hospitalized. 27 patients were hospitalized, who in the course of their admission were triaged and processed, and currently surgical incisions are made of the last patients admitted. And I don't remember in Skopje what was done to me. I know I was resuscitated, and when they took me to Belgrade, I was conscious, but I could only hear and not see because my eyes were swollen. Half of the injured in the Fočani are hospitalized in medical centers in 9 countries. Critical patients with 2nd and 3rd degree burns that are under the monitoring and treatment of hospital teams in Bulgaria, Serbia, Turkey, Austria, as well as in hospital in Lithuania, Slovenia, and Croatia, where they were transported via aircraft and by vehicles, ambulance vehicles. When they told me I was going to Belgrade, that I should not be afraid, but I heard that. I realized it was rather serious. My name is Anastasia Sokolova, and I'm 24 years old. I study at the IT university, and I'm one of the injured in the fire that took place in Kočani. That evening, first I arrived in Kočani hospital, and I was transferred to the Štip hospital by my father. He took me there. In Štip, they provided first aid to me, a cardiologist. I don't remember his name. My father knows his name. He went me to the intensive care unit, and they put me in bed, and after a few hours I received oxygen support. Then they provided help, and dressing of my wounds was made. I had burns on my face and on my right arm. From there, I was transferred to the 8th of September hospital in Skopje. I stayed there for 2 days. From that point, there were doctors from Israel, Serbia, I remember this. They dressed my wounds. I remember we talked in English. I was sedated for the dressings. First, I was informed that I would be sent abroad, and a bunch of doctors came to my room, and they informed me that they were preparing me to be sent to Italy. My name is Vera Grozdanova. I'm 19 years old, and I am one of the individuals injured in the Pulse discotheque fire in Kočani. The very day, the evening when the fire started, my memories are completely erased, and I don't remember what exactly happened. At the moment I started remembering when I got up from coma in Greece, I know that at every single point in time I had somebody next to me, and people in Greece and the entire team and staff saved my life. The very next day when I woke up in Italy, I was informed that an operation would be performed on me. That was the 4th day after the fire. So skin transplantation would be performed on me. I would be donor to myself from the left hand. Skin would be grafted to my right hand. With the face, I don't know what it was going to happen, that there are 3 critical fingers that would remain operational or not, and that my sister and father would come to me prior to the operation in Italy. But I know that the organization was perfect, because the fact that I'm standing before you is that my condition was very critical, and quick response and expertise was required to do that, to be able to be saved in time. I am thankful, and I owe my life to our country, because it intervened in time and sent us, the critical patients, to a close place, thanks God, Thessaloniki, to the Papa Nikolaou Hospital in Thessaloniki. They saved my life, and every second meant life for me. And this coincided such that I can continue today. prevention was performed at Papa Nikolaou in Thessaloniki. I was unconscious for a long time. It was just like a dream, but continuously. Those are my memories I have in my head from the moment in artificial coma. And when I asked my father for the first time what date it was, I couldn't even talk properly because of the burns of my respiratory ways. And he said the 16th of April. So maximum support and help was offered to me by the medical staff there, and great support by my family and parents. After the 35th day, I was moved to the ward, and they took care of me, not as a patient, but as their child. My parents were very transparent with me from the very first point when they realized I was aware and that I understood the environment and the effects of all that happened. And I'm really thankful for what they shared with me. After the operation, they managed to save 2 fingers for sure. About my small finger, we didn't know whether it would be amputated or not. Then we continued with physical therapy. There were 3 physical therapists. When I came back from the treatment in Greece, even the journey was rather complex. It was rather toiling, but I could hardly wait to reach home and come back to my home. And I had some open wounds and I need wound dressings, and they referred me to a doctor in Kočani by the name of Kate. And in these moments I was frightened who would be receiving me here, whether they would be treating me well. But I felt secure and safe in her hands, and I wish to thank her for all her efforts. The relationship and trust we have in her is not only related to a doctor in terms of our wounds, but she supported us psychologically. In terms of psychological issues, the very same doctor helped us for everything, literally, starting from wounds to after midnight talks. She didn't create any panic with us, and somehow she would push us forward. It was a large group of children, and there were some other of them who didn't want to see themselves in the mirror, and we were still in this stage, and the entire stage lasted for 4 days until we encouraged each other, and this helped us a lot. The rehabilitation, physical therapists, doctors, surgeons came to us, checked up on us. We went on Pan.Iv mountain. We re-socialized because here in the city there was panic. Everybody was looking at us, and we had, well, a wonderful experience, so to say, in such moments. It was wonderful indeed to be accepted as we are by the people and take care of us the way they took care of us here. I don't know what words to use, what positive words to use. I've changed myself as a person in many aspects. I was a person that would worry too much about everything in life, but this experience showed me that the valedictorian title was given to me in intensive care unit. At that point, it meant nothing to me. And My life completely changed its direction, and I realize nowadays that indeed it has no value if you're not healthy. I am a family person. I look after my family, my child, my wife. The chance given to me to continue doing that in life means more than anything. Indeed, there are some good days and there are some bad days, and there will be some bad days, but we need to move on. We need to continue fighting for ourselves and for the ones who fight for us. My message is that anybody facing a challenge, and generally all people, they need to be thankful and show gratitude for every day they live and appreciate all things. And everybody facing any temptation and challenge, fight for your closest ones. Our life can stop in a second, and we need to take every moment offered to us, do the things we love, spread positivity, love each other. Honestly, thank God I'm alive. In the course of time, we will recover. Though I think I am better, I can use my hands. I have no medical impairment. Psychologically, it's this and that. A person has 1 million desires, and the sick person has just one desire: to get better. Yes, I wish to win. I'm persistent. Today, they not only survived, once they proved that care, solidarity, and system can make a difference. From flames to hopes, from tragedy to unity and togetherness. This is a story of life that moves on. We never threw stones on God. We didn't sin more than the others. Just with one hope. Just for a crumb of love. Just for a little happiness. We are living. Knock on wood. It is true. It's spring outside and we are alive. Knock on wood.
This is an applause, round of applause for all of them, for their courage, for their willingness to live on. They're our inspiration and our motivation. I'm so proud to be part of their lives and to have met them. And so we're going to continue working for the better quality of life for these children and for a better future. After such an emotional interval, it is difficult to move on with the discussion, but a shared sorrow is less of sorrow. Today we have also with us the president of the European Association of Burns, that association that is developing guidelines and protocols for treatment and coordinating European experts who are treating burns. So, Dr. Lepetris, I would kindly ask you if you could give us an introduction into the European protocols for burns, and if you could kindly share your experience, because we were not alone in this. You have experience with other mass casualty incidents.
Yes, definitely it is not easy to move on after such a video. So my name is Nadia De Petris. Can you hear me well? It's better if I go back, I don't know. What should I do now? So I'm a doctor. I'm an anesthesiologist and intensivist, because in Italy where I work and live, they are the same specialty. And I've been working for more than 20 years in a trauma center. And especially I'm working as an intensivist in the birth center of Turin in the north part of Italy. And I've been working there for 15 years, more than 15 years actually now. It happens also, as it was kindly said, that I'm at the moment the president of the European Burn Association. And as a European Burns Association, first of all, I would like to say that we look at Europe as a geographical entity and a cultural entity, more than as a political entity. Even if we sometimes work closely with the European Union, we have among our members that comes from all the European countries. We work, actually, our purpose as a scientific society is to improve burn care and prevention, working for professionals, patients, and population. We do that, as was said, preparing guidelines, preparing educational events, such the next one that will be in 2 months, I think exactly in 2 months from now, from today, in Bucharest. And we have also support, we do also support to research, and we work as advisors in the preparation of the mass casualties preparedness plans, as those that were described this morning by the colleague from the European Civil Protection Mechanism. Basically, when it comes to burn mass casualties, we work as advisors before with other societies and together with the institution of the European Union to prepare the plans. Then we work during the phase of these such unfortunate events as, let's say, supervisors. Sometimes some of us can be involved at a professional level, but on a personal level. As an institution, we work as a sort of supervisors, and then we analyze after the event what went well and what could be improved next time. I would like to speak specifically about 3 different events. So not just the mass casualties that you had last year here, but 2 other similar events. If you think about 2015 collective in Bucharest, then there was in Kocani the burn mass casualties in the Pulse nightclub. And then there was just at the beginning of this year in Crans-Montana in the Constellation, another very similar event. We lost more than 200 young people, just if we take these 3 events. Then there are others that happened before and also during these 10 years time. And we had almost, I think, 500 injured young life. I'll just share some lessons that we learned as institution. Then there are many others. But one thing that I would like to mention is that it's very important for a country to have already in place preparedness plans, specifically prepared for burns, and a burn center already functioning. Because in this way, that country is more able both to address the acute phase immediately, then it can rely also, as was said many, many times today, on the network of the neighbor countries or also countries in other parts of Europe, but also can then have a better follow-up of the patient when they come back, because the center has already experienced. Another very important thing is to activate immediately the European civil protection mechanism. We should be very modest. If such a rich countries as Switzerland had the same problems facing such a big number of patients, I think that each of our countries should be very modest and activate immediately the mechanism. Another thing that I would like to mention is that actually we need, as professionals and also thinking about our patients and the families, we need politicians, governments, and also media that listen to us, support us, and don't add extra pressure to us. Because it's a very delicate moment for the patients, the families, and also for the professionals that are trying to do their best in that moment, and we have already enough pressure at that moment. The last thing that I would like to mention, and it was already said just in the panel session before, is about prevention. If you think just about these three events, then there are many others very similar. It's really the same pattern. Entertainment in a closed space with sometimes exits, not so, security exits not so properly functioning or working. Furniture that sometimes is very easy to get on fire, and the use of fireworks inside the closed space. Besides thinking about how we dress ourselves, because often we use materials that also are really easy to get on fire. There was also, just in the Constellation in Crans-Montana, the thoughts about a father that thought about the difference between the boys and the girls, how they were injured, because maybe the girls were dressed with, let's say, for example, for the legs, they were just with tight socks that were really get on flame. So as a European Burners Association, we started to work also about this, and we, even knowing that there are many, many different factors, we are now working on the first factor, that is the use of fireworks in closed space. So we got the signatures of more than 1,000 people, and now we are moving on, going to the European level and asking for taking a measure for at least this factor. Thank you.
Во нашата земја веќе се превземени некои од овие.
We have already taken some of these measures in our country, and we do have this prevention or ban on using fireworks in closed areas. And there were several activities following the fire. Could you, and then from the perspective of your ministry, what were the activities that were taken following the incident? Thank you, Gordana. I have to admit that this video that we just witnessed took me back a year ago to that fatal night when a lot of things happened for Kochani, for the families, the community, the entire city and country. This will leave, of course, traces in there and our memories. And we still live today through the crisis, just as back in those days. So I remember when we had our first coordination meeting and all stakeholders were there, but we allocated and divided responsibilities and in the end agreed to make a final decision and about the patients, whether we would send them abroad or keep them here in the country. And then with Mr. Grambozov and Traice, we went to another office because the minister asked me, or I was upon me as a minister to make the final decision, which I'm happy to say with a successful facing with this tragedy, and we have been able to return 115 patients fully, almost recovered to Macedonia. Since I was also the chairperson of the managing board together with my colleagues, and we already had divided our responsibilities, and the government issued a decision to exempt all patients from the participation in their health care costs at the clinics in the country. But this was not the end. Our in-depth analysis pointed to the need of a revision of the existing procedures. We did prove that we have a good system in place, but based on our experience, based on the experiences of other countries with their incidents, we knew that we would have to divide the patients and that we had to define the procedures and protocols to be able to have as timely a response as possible and support for these patients in terms of any future mass casualties events. So we did work intensively, and today we are still proud that as a government and a ministry, in coordination, of course, with the other institution, we managed to adopt the first national plan for dealing with mass casualties. This is a document that was missing in the past, and that defines in the action plan all responsibilities, so that we have a plan of responding in a similar scenario involving mass casualties. In parallel with this, and what also makes us proud as a government, is that the decision that we adopted several weeks ago to procure 100 ambulances. This is a serious budget that was allocated for this, and especially as considering we have not had new ones for 10 years, we have a very poor fleet, and once we procure these new, of course, ambulance, we will be able to provide much more and meaningful assistance. Some of the patients that were not that heavily affected by this incident were provided with rehabilitation stay at the Pan.Iv center, where we were able to accommodate some 60 patients. As a ministry, in terms of policy creation, I think we achieved a lot. In parallel, we also work with the dean and the pro-dean of the Faculty of Medicine on introducing paramedics in our health system. That is to say, a study program for paramedics, not only for the healthcare, but also in the defense and in other areas which require this profile. I believe that in years' time, we have done a lot as a ministry, and we are proud for every step that we have taken together with all of the colleagues and the citizens of the Kočani municipality. Let me add something on to what you said. The Ministry of Health set up the working groups on two occasions. The first one in May, several months following the incident, when a team of doctors with the various specialties went to the Kočani hospital and evaluated all patients 6 months after the incident. And we did a re-evaluation of the patients with an extended working group that involved various disciplines, with the goal of not only seeing the current condition but also the needs of the patients, to see what patient requires what kind of treatment and whether they need more attention to their scars or they need more physical therapy. So this is a continuous process, and the patients are monitored constantly. This somehow takes us back to the hospitals and their capacities. Dr. Nastov, in terms of hospital management, how did you deal with the incident in the first days? How did we manage? Well, we probably managed much better than in our wildest dreams and expectations, because, as was said by several of the panelists earlier, we need the plans for emergencies and response to emergencies and large numbers of casualties. And of course, these plans have to consist of things that we know, we have learned throughout our education, but there are always moments that you cannot be prepared for, regardless of all the plans that you may have, and that require an ad hoc response and intervention. The biggest challenge at the beginning was to mobilize the staff, because the very time of the incident was not in your regular hours, but it was somewhere about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and that meant we had to mobilize the majority of the hospital staff. And I have to say, for my institution, that in less than 60 minutes, more than 70% of the staff were at their workplaces and expecting the first patients that started coming in. And in principle, we had no issues with the triage and accommodation capacities, because in coordination with the crisis headquarters and the 2 other large hospitals in Skopje, with the Mother Teresa Clinic and the September 8 one, and throughout this communication, we never found ourselves in a situation where a patient was referred to any of these institutions, ours included, without us having appropriate space and accommodation. So that was coordination at the highest possible level. And on the other hand, patients were adequately taken care of in our institution. For example, the intensive care capacity is 8 hospital beds, but we were able to turn those into 20 beds in line with our plan for preparedness for mass casualty incidents. The Health Insurance Fund director mentioned that this is the second largest incident in terms of the number of patients to be admitted and treated by the healthcare system. In absolute numbers, it is the second largest, but due to the specifics of the injuries, I think this is the way biggest burden that the health care system in Macedonia has faced. We have had incidents with maybe even a larger number of patients, but to accept 200 and plus patients in your public and private healthcare system is something amazing, really, and will probably be recorded in the annals of the European medicine and medical protocols, because all of these patients were adequately treated, and based on our information that were shared during the crisis between the hospitals, the management of patients was so good that I believe no patient that required mechanical ventilation were not subjected to tracheostomia. So they were intubated timely and treated adequately through and through. So the protocol and the work itself were at a very high level. As for challenges, I believe those were more of physical nature, because it was a huge number of patients, and in such situations you do not have sufficient dressing material and corresponding medicines. And but this is the Ministry of Health where they came in, and a big portion of the private pharmacies were ready to open their warehouses, because it was a Sunday, and we almost never felt any lack of materials or medicines throughout the entire treatment of the patients. This is only evidence that the preparedness with an adequate plan and the staff and human care can, of course, lead to positive results even in these incidents of such nature. But beyond this institutional aspect, we have the local community, which does play a crucial role when things like this happen in a city. So from your perspective as a mayor, what do you think of the process of recovery and supports over the past period?
First of all, I would go back to the event taking place initially, because I was witnessing many things back then, and after the completion of treatment and changing my profession from a physician to a mayor of Kocani now, and until my current term of office, I was visited by a number of embassies, and the main topic of discussion was how we handled the situation, what we did, and why it happened. Viewed from the aspect of why it happened, to blame it on the institutions of the system, inspectors, administration, and offices and services, yes, there is criticism in this regard, but when we discussed with the Swiss ambassador and the Roman delegation, even in those countries where the rule of law is prevailing, where the guidelines and protocols are fully adhered to, such accidents happen in Sweden and the Netherlands. Such mass casualty tragedies do take place. So yes, there is criticism to the institutional response. The first thing was to check up on all the nightclubs and bars. They do have their licenses, security licenses, and have their security protocols. So this was not something that could be complained for. So that was my first task. When we discussed all of this in terms of how we handled the critical night, I was a witness both in the Kocani Hospital and Štip Hospital, and I was also witnessing in Skopje hospitals how the process was taking place. Before this happened, I did criticize the Kocani Hospital because I disagreed with how it operated, but at that point, right now, I cannot say yes. It was a chaotic picture that I wouldn't wish anyone to see. And with the capacity we had as a hospital, who could handle this situation? Since we were initially stationed in the Štip hospital, I will go back again to Kocani. All the doctors in Kocani were mobilized, and I have no complaints in this regard. Humanity and mobilization were maximum, and all of them were arriving in hospital within 5 to 10 minutes time. Everybody was helping, and the disaster was of huge magnitude. All medical persons were summoned, starting from GPs and institution employees, and everybody that could assist in the hospital. And the neighboring municipalities got involved with their vehicles and resources. And it was also rather helpful. And regarding Štip Hospital, I can only commend them, where within a very brief period they got organized, they gave their maximum. However, the alarm was raised to the central level, the Ministry of Health, Health Insurance Fund, and all stakeholders, the Crisis Management Center, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Defense. And at that point, from there, the positive development started for all of these children. This video touched me very much, and I'm coming back from the commemoration of the deceased, and nobody can remain indifferent to all of this, but we need to stand up and move forward. When the red alarm was activated within the country, I can only say commends and kudos to everyone, because at the clinical center in Skopje and the city hospital of the 8th of September and St. Naum Ohridski General Hospital, they were fully mobilized, and this golden hour for the injured was crucial. That was the main saving period where the initial introduction of mechanical ventilation of children and relief of pain was extremely important. And I will mention all the doctors, the director of the clinic. I remember everyone and all. I'm replaying the entire event, and I know who was doing what and what you were doing, and I could see how the vehicles were arriving. And I was wondering whether our country had already had the capacity, and if we had sufficient equipment for mechanical ventilation, because the children kept coming either by their own vehicles or hospital vehicles. So within those few hours, starting from 6 in the morning to 8, 9 in the morning, until the decision was reached to deploy children to foreign countries, and that foreign states opened their hospitals to our children. Within those 3 hours, I didn't know what to think, and all sorts of thoughts came to my mind simply with the number that was coming to Skopje, how the country would cope with. Once they published the news that the red alarm was activated of the EU, when the news was published that the World Burn Centers were open to accept our children, somehow I was lit by this thought, and I became hopeful, because when I saw my daughter as a parent, when I had arrived in Štip, she was already dressed, her wounds were dressed up, and I was clear what level we were at and what we should do next. Another thing I may share is that the decision was blessed to leave our vanities and not to fight for a competition and seek help, because there is no country that can handle such level of tragedy. Even with the Swiss ambassador, when I talked to him a few days ago, they say that they sought help as well, but the pain and tragedy was not that focused on one place, because in their bar in Grand Montana, there were children from different states, and the countries themselves, for example, Germany, immediately alarmed the system to withdraw their own children in their own system. Austria and France, likewise, Slovenia and Italy. This disaster for a place like Kočani, it has inconceivable dimensions. And once we referred our children, the main point was that we are not vain and that we are seeking assistance. So when we referred to the world centers, we were among the first ones, probably as a result of your triage, since it was about one of the more severely injured ones. My daughter, when we went to the hospital where she was treated, I can no think of words to thank the doctors that worked day in, day out, without water, without food, without thinking of any giving up the fight till the last of their breaths to save our children. I wish to thank them as a representative of Kočani. I wish to thank all the institutions involved, both at the national and local and international levels. And thanks to all of these stakeholders, we still, the number is not small and low, but if it weren't for this mechanism and if it weren't for this action, this number would have been much higher. It would have been a death sentence for the entire town. That is the case right now. 200 injured, 63 dead. Young people, as institutions, will do our best to adhere to protocols, observe them, and provide maximum support, and become a chain or a link between the central and local governments, and do whatever we can for the parents of the deceased children to be met in terms of their needs and requests, to utilize all the mechanisms. And it is to be commended that you are doing this at the Ministry of Health, the government, to identify a final solution for the children we just saw on the video, to support them psychologically, make them psychologically strong when they view themselves in the mirror and say that their scars have healed and have been treated properly.
You gave us this unique perspective because you're at the head of the municipality, but also a colleague, a doctor, at the same time being a parent. You have been involved in the process since the very beginning, and then you took over the management of the municipality. From your viewpoint, what would your message to the survivors and families be? I have stressed this many times. We will do whatever it takes in life. We will reopen all the doors of the world centers and the centers in our country. We will remain in close coordination with you and all institutions. And I would like to use this opportunity to encourage young people and promise not to stop here, that this is only the beginning, and we will continue to fight until every single individual's car is healed and every single injured kid is reintegrated into society. This is my legacy and what I can guarantee. There was no institution that was out of the process or that was not involved in it. Of course, the humanitarian organizations were some of them. Can you tell us something more about the work of the Red Cross, both during and after the incident? Of course, I am here today as a representative of the NGO sector, but let me first of all introduce you to the work of the Red Cross. As in the past, this time was also demonstrated that the NGOs provide this added value in certain situations, and we say that the Red Cross is an organization that helps institutions in the country, that builds partnerships, and we once again demonstrated, because our setup is not of that nature. We acted as a good partner and someone who supports and contributes to the government policies, and try to fill in certain gaps in some of the situations. The Red Cross is an organization that became involved in dealing with the consequences of the disaster since the first days I was there, since 5 o'clock that morning, and then mobilized the entire organization and our potentials and capacities, and in a very brief time a big number of volunteers came to Kočani. Initially there were 150 of us that placed their capacities in service of all the institution. I would divide what we did in 3 stages. The first one being the activities undertaken on the very first day by the Red Cross, including activities relating to support for hospitals in Kočani, Štipenskopje, and admission and first aid points were opened in all of them, and humanitarian aid was distributed to the hospitals in Kočani and Štip. We also opened helplines for the population. Our teams that we have in the organization made themselves immediately available to support the people that were near the hospital, and of course, as part of our obligations, we opened up the instruments that we use in such situations to mobilize humanitarian aid. Let me say at the beginning that what we did extremely well, it was that we were able to agree immediately that humanitarian aid would be concentrated and focused in one place. This was supported by the government, and of course this does not mean that the Red Cross is not independent and autonomous in its activities, but our capacities to mobilize humanitarian aid have grown, and it was our assessment at that time that the organization and history and practice of the Red Cross and transparency and accountability is the guarantee that this humanitarian aid will be timely and efficiently allocated. The next day, of course, we were faced with the next obligations. Our daily work was, of course, coordinated and aligned with the instructions that came from the crisis headquarters, but we, of course, did propose our solutions and suggestions, and this next day we were entrusted with the obligation to organize the logistics required for taking over the bodies of the injured and their transport to the city of Kochine, and the entire organization of the funerals. We had numerous volunteers, first aid and psychological first aid and all other support. And this was all in coordination with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, and crisis headquarters and local self-government. So it was an activity that did make us proud, although it was a very bad situation, but excellent communication and efficiency, because the obligations were allocated timely and efficiently, and we did function as an efficient state system for coping with consequences of such tragedies.
The entire time today, all of us and the previous panelists spoke about the need for coordination and harmonization, the need for improvement and learning the lessons and translating such lessons into activities. And we, from the Red Cross, from everything that we did in terms of the response to the crisis in Kočani, drew some conclusions that were immediately translated into internal solutions, so that the Red Cross is ready for any future crises that are not wished for but come unannounced, to make the Red Cross even more prepared and better partner for the state in situations where the effects of such crisis situations should be removed. To that end, we modified the internal regulations of the Red Cross that regulates disaster management, and set up a new unit within the Red Cross that did not exist in this composition, that is much more efficient. We set up minor teams in municipal organizations and a potential of 150 up to 200 people that are highly professionally prepared, regardless of the fact that they're volunteers, that can put themselves to the service in such situations. And something that we learned, and I wish to underscore, regardless of the fact that it was discussed today, is the aspect of psychological support and psychological first aid. The need is obvious for this to be incorporated in all of the protocols and strategies on crisis response, because it's very important, and much shall be invested in this. I think that the line ministry is responsible for making the policies and tailoring the crisis management system, should ensure the institutionalization of the psychological support that should be regular and normal in such situations. That is very important in these crisis situations. This crisis was very difficult, without material damage, but with a lot of human casualties. Hence, we need to be prepared for, may God forbid, any situations where people should be addressed adequately. And I think that psychological support is important not only for the injured and survivors, but their families as well, the institutions of the system, firefighters, medical staff that get involved in these situations. And as a Red Cross, we did that this time. And I think that we are the only institution that only on the ground, in addition to the health care workers, we opened a regional center for psychological support, and I think that the mayor was in attendance and also the respected minister. It was the right move because it indeed gives rise to results. There was a range of activities on the ground. We worked with the schools. About 500 teachers from the eastern region of the country were trained to provide psychological help. We worked with the students because it was rather problematic for them. It was challenging. They didn't want to go to school. And we need to take our part of the responsibility in addition to the Ministry of Education to work with them in order to get them back to normal. And I think that this psychosocial support regional center should be a good example on how to set up similar centers in the other regions of the country, be it about crisis or regular situations, because it is obvious that life contains certain challenges of this nature that should be prevented ahead of time in order to find it easier to cope with the real situations. So indeed, for the Red Cross, it was a huge experience, in spite of the fact that as an organization, we have been facing recently with crisis in our operation. However, this was beyond of this range of crisis taking place, and certainly this imposed on us certain new lessons, new experiences, new practices that will be able to translate to future solutions, and thus these solutions can be put to the service of the country, because it is our responsibility, regardless of the fact that we are not part of the national health system. We do belong to this country, we serve the people of this country, and we sometimes initiate and wish to undertake greater responsibilities and not going beyond our competencies and opportunities and possibilities. And finally, as the Red Cross, we lost many volunteers. 3 of them are not among the living, Stefania, Dragana, and Sylvia, who are not among us, and some of the injured were good volunteers. We are waiting for them to get well and get back to our staff in order to make sure that a regular life is brought back in Kočani and enable people live as they deserve in the future. So finally, the Red Cross, through the instruments we activated, secured 164 million denars that until yesterday were fully transferred to the people needing this money. We performed 2 audits, and yesterday the account was audited regarding the accountability and transparency. It was published on our website, and certainly this is the guarantee that if we behave this way, people will trust us further. Institutions will find a trustful partner in us. And one more thing I wish to mention, that we as a Red Cross got organized with the other countries offering their help, the Red Cross of Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, Slovenia, Croatia. Some of them provided funds as well, and from the International Red Cross Organization, International Federation, we received support of 170,000 euro that provided for the needs of people in Kočani, and we are communicating with these international partners still. And I hope that the Red Cross in the coming period, through the institutional collaboration, contributed to improving the livelihood of people in Kočani.
I'm very glad to see that it seems that time is not enough to share all the solutions, all the learned lessons that we have gained from this experience. But these incidents are not just a medical challenge, but requires response from a number of institutions. If we are well prepared and if we implement the protocols duly, we can also draw conclusions, and we can set better advantages for the future. Thank you for the panelists.